Alright everybody, how's it going? Void here, coming back at you all with another Commander deck tech, and this time it's for a controversial card, Negan the Cold-Blooded, 5 mana, red, white, and black colors, for a 4/3 legendary human rogue. When he enters the battlefield, you and target opponent each secretly choose a creature that player controls. Then those choices are revealed, and that player sacrifices those creatures. Now there's also a second ability. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a creature, you create a treasure token. Treasure tokens are the artifacts that you can tap and sacrifice to add a mana to your pool. As you can imagine, any kind of deck where you could remove creatures and be rewarded for it, it's going to be pretty solid. So Negan's going to provide that for us, and we're going to look and see what kind of synergies we can fool around with. We definitely want to fool around with sacrificing, we get rewarded for it. We also want to focus on ETBs, and even treasure token synergies, because there are some win cons associated with getting a ton of treasure tokens. But first, let's go over the boring part of the deck, the lands. There's really nothing notable here. It's what you would expect in 3 colors. We have the mana fixing for it. The one card I would recommend for the deck is Forbidden Orchard, because you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color to your pool, but it also gives an opponent a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token, which you could also force them to sacrifice at some point in the game. Because our opponent's sacrificing creatures, that means that we get more mana. They need to have creatures for us to sacrifice. So what I really want to focus on here is treasure tokens. I think they're really cool. We have a lot of ways to get more treasure tokens. We have Brass's Bounty. This is a pretty big one. For each land we control, we create a colorless treasure artifact token with tap to sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Not a card I would normally recommend, but because we do have a focus on treasure tokens and artifacts, something like this could net us a ton of tokens that we could deal some more damage with. We have our win cons. There are multiple ways that we can win with the deck. We have Captain Lannery Storm. She has haste, and whenever she attacks, we create a treasure token. Whenever we sacrifice a treasure, she gets +1/+0 until end of turn, so she could get pretty big, but mostly in here just to give us those treasures. We have Dockside Extortionist, one of the most ridiculous red cards printed in the last couple years. ETB's getting us as many treasure tokens equal to the number of artifacts and enchantments our opponents control just for a 2 mana creature is pretty insane. We have Gadrak the Crown Scourge, can't attack unless we control 4 or more artifacts. Spoiler alert, that's going to be pretty easy, because at the beginning of our end step, we create a treasure token for each non-token creature that died this turn. We have Pirate's Pillage, not a card, again, that I would recommend normally in Commander, but we cast it, we discard a card, but we get to draw 2 and create 2 colorless treasure artifact tokens, so we get some more advantage there. Get more treasure tokens too. Pitiless Plunderer. We don't play a ton of creatures, but if they die, we want to get some more treasure tokens. We have a card I think is actually pretty underrated. It's Rapacious Dragon. 5 mana, 3/3 flyer. It enters the battlefield and we create 2 treasure tokens, so if you can abuse ETBs, something like this pales in comparison to Dockside Extortionist. But on ETB, just getting us treasure tokens, it's definitely not bad. We have Revel in Riches, which I think a lot of people immediately thought of this card when they saw Negan. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, we create a treasure token, so it's not quite as restrictive as Negan's trigger where it has to be sacrificed. The big reason why we play Revel in Riches, aside from that, is it gives us a win con at the beginning of our upkeep. If we control 10 or more treasures, we win the game. So this, in addition to Negan, whenever we force them to sacrifice creatures, it's going to get us a ton of those treasure tokens. We should be able to win with this pretty easily. Well, at least as easily as you could normally win with Revel in Riches. You do have to wait till your upkeep, so it gives your opponent a chance to interfere. We have Shiny Impetus from Commander 2020. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and is goaded, so it can't attack you. Whenever enchanted creature attacks, you create a treasure token. So that's pretty nice to throw that on an opponent's creature and it can't attack you. Just be aware that if you do force your opponents to sacrifice, they're probably going to easily just sacrifice the creature you have goaded. Smothering Tithe is a must-have for this deck, kind of like Revel in Riches. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they can pay 2 mana. If they don't, we get a treasure token, so more of those treasure tokens. It means we're going to win pretty easily. We have another awesome card here in Treasure Map, which is only going to get us more treasure tokens. Very underrated card for the value. You can pay 1 to tap it and scry 1. Each time you do that, you get a landmark counter on it, and once there are 3 or more landmark counters on it, we remove the counters and then transform it, and we create 3 colorless treasure artifact tokens. It also becomes a pretty good land for the deck because we can tap it to sacrifice a treasure to draw a card. So I think that's decent enough value. We don't have the best card draw in the deck, so we have it on a land here. We do have some artifact ramp here. We are a somewhat artifact-focused deck. We have Arcane Signet, Burnished Heart, Felwar Stone, Orzhov Signet, Rakdos Signet, Soul Ring, Solemn Simulacrum, Talisman of Conviction, Talisman of Hierarchy, Talisman of Indulgence, and Wayfarer's Bauble. We don't want to be short on the ramp in this deck because once we get our commander out there, we do have some win cons we want to get to quickly, so play a decent amount of ramp and hopefully we can get there. We do have some ETB Manipulation. We have Conjurer's Closet. At the beginning of our end step, we can exile target creature, and then bring it back. So that's what we're going to do with our Negan. We have Eldrazi Displacer. Big reason to play the Talismans is that they tap for colorless, so we have a way to pay for Eldrazi Displacer's activated ability. We have Ephemerate. I think this is one of the better instant blink cards, because it has rebound, so we get more than one use out of it. Very efficient to cast this, and then we can just force our opponents to sack some creatures. The unfortunate part about Negan's ETB is that our opponent could choose the same creature we do, so instead of sacrificing 2, they would only have to sacrifice 1, but most of the time, we want to target the person who has the most creatures, so we don't end up sacrificing the same creature. Helm of the Host, another great way to abuse ETBs, and also it's just beneficial because if you have more Negans out there, you're going to get more Negan triggers whenever an opponent sacrifices a creature, so instead of just getting 1, you'll get 2. Pretty powerful. We also have Panharmonicon just to double the ETBs. Also, you could do these with pretty much any other creature, like Dockside Extortionist, that's pretty powerful. We also have the biggest part of the deck, which is sacrifice removal. If you can get all kinds of sack triggers from Negan, it's going to give you a ton of those treasure tokens, so we have Aweless Dust. Each player sacrifices all colored permanents he or she controls, which, yes, we might have to sacrifice Negan, but our treasure tokens will be fine, so we can easily just recast him and keep our turn going. Cataclysmic Gearhulk, whenever you get like the Cataclysm cards, yes, you're gonna sacrifice a lot of treasure tokens, but you're hopefully going to get more back. And I think you just want to have sacrifice removal in general. We have Crackling Doom, 3 mana for pretty much getting 3 treasure tokens, I think is sweet. We have Death Cloud, which is, I guess we could consider a win con if we dump enough mana into it. The idea is to get plenty of treasure tokens so that lands don't really matter, and we forced our opponents to sacrifice their creatures. Then we start playing our stuff, and then hopefully we can win from there. It's not always ideal, but it's pretty fun if it does work. We have Fleshbag Marauder, enters the battlefield, each player sacks a creature. We have It That Betrays, which could be a win con in here. I do have a separate section for win cons, but those are more like certain win cons, like you really know you're gonna win. It That Betrays, I think, is perfect for the deck. It's flavorful. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent, you put that card onto the battlefield under your control, so do this before you Death Cloud. You should probably win. We have Kaya's Guile, kind of the same idea as Crackling Doom, but we do have some versatility, so we can hate on graveyards too. We have Living Death. The idea here is to just get plenty of triggers for Negan. We don't necessarily have to have a lot of stuff in our graveyard, but if we can force our opponents to sacrifice their boards, that's going to be a lot of treasure tokens. It could set up for a pretty wild turn. We have Martyr's Bond, which I think is a must-have for this kind of deck because we run so many treasure token creators. If we sacrifice a treasure, our opponents are going to have to sacrifice an artifact because tokens do technically hit the graveyard. So every time we do that, artifact decks are going to get punished by this card. It is wonderful. We have Merciless Executioner. We have Mythos of Snapdax. So 4 mana sorcery, if we pay red and black into it, which is pretty much a sure thing, you get to choose which artifact, creature, enchantment, and planeswalker that they keep, so it's not just up to them. It's kind of like another Cataclysm, but it's a little bit more beneficial to us. We have Plaguecrafter, of course, to do the same thing as Merciless Executioner and Fleshbag. We have Single Combat. Each player is going to choose a creature or planeswalker they control, then sacrifice the rest. Usually it's just going to be Negan out there. We might have some other creatures, but we want our opponents to end up sacrificing a ton of their stuff. We have Tragic Arrogance, another Cataclysm-like card. Pretty powerful to just have a way of punishing our opponents like this. And then we have Vona's Hunger, another 3 mana card that's really going to help us out if we want to keep our turn going. If we have the City's Blessing, each opponent has to sacrifice half their creatures rounded up, which I think for the mana is brilliant. Now we do have some win cons here. We have Hellkite Tyrant. Doesn't have anything to do with treasure, but when it deals combat damage to a player, we gain control of all artifacts that player controls. That's really good. At the beginning of our upkeep, if we control 20 or more artifacts, we win the game. Not as hard as it might seem. Again, we have all those ways of sacrificing with Negan. We should be able to get a ton of those tokens. We have Mycosynth Lattice and Vandal Blast, which I think is a pretty cheap win con. Yes, it's not going to be the most satisfying, but since we're playing black, we can tutor it up. We are playing an artifact deck already. So this and Vandal Blast, or this and really any other of those sacrifice cards that can deal with artifacts, is going to be pretty devastating. And we have Torment of Hailfire. Yes, I consider it a win con, because we can get a ton of those treasure tokens. I don't really think it's a bad idea to spend them all on tormenting our opponents, so they have to sacrifice a bunch of permanents. Will probably end up giving us more treasure tokens to use for the rest of the turn, if it doesn't just kill them outright. We do have some protection because we want to protect ourselves, obviously. We have Flawless Maneuver. A free way of giving our creatures indestructible until the end of turn is pretty nice. We also have Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots for Negan or any important creature. And we do have Teferi's Protection. Whenever you have to deal with lethal damage or anything like that, we want to keep ourselves going. We do have some ways of drawing cards, although I said we don't have a ton. We do have Mangara the Diplomat, one of the best ways in white now of drawing cards. So whenever an opponent attacks us with 2 or more creatures, we get to draw a card, and whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, we draw a card. So brilliant in white. Phyrexian Arena, obviously. And then we have Species Specialist. So for 4 mana, 2/3 Human Warrior, it enters the battlefield, we choose a creature type, and whenever a creature of the chosen type dies, we may draw a card. Very sweet card, I like it. I think it's good in a deck where you have plenty of removal. And there are a ton of tribal decks in Commander, so all you have to do is just choose the creature type for the tribal deck you're going up against, and you'll probably have a lot of opportunities to draw cards. We do have some ways of benefiting from our treasure tokens. Since we're going to sacrifice them, we want some ways of dealing damage or forcing our opponents to lose a life. We have Marionette Master. With Fabricate 3, choose to put the 3+1/+1 counters on her, because then you can just sacrifice a treasure token and then have a target opponent lose 4 life. So really something, if you have plenty of those treasure tokens out there, like all you need is 10 and you can threaten lethal to someone and just keep getting more of those treasure tokens, keep sacrificing them, and you're pretty much good to go. Mayhem Devil, kind of the same idea. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, it deals 1 damage to any target. This is for any player sacrificing a permanent, so if we play something like a Torment of Hailfire, it's going to deal more damage to them. Just really good, really flavorful with the deck. Since the deck is all about sacrificing, it's perfect. We do have some other removal spells because we don't just want to depend on sacrificing. We have Wear and Tear. For 3 mana total, we can destroy an artifact and an enchantment. We have Swords to Plowshares because sometimes you really just want to permanently deal with a creature. We have Ruinous Ultimatum. Way too good to pass up, even if it doesn't sacrifice. It just destroys all non-land permanents. And then we have Anguished Unmaking, even though the picture isn't coming up. So we have more permanent ways of dealing with our opponent's permanents. And like I said before, we want to get to our win con, so we do have some tutors here. Demonic Tutor, Enlightened Tutor, and Vampiric Tutor. We want to get some kind of precision in our deck. We want some kind of consistency in our strategy. So pick out whatever win con you think is going to benefit you the most. I personally love going for Torment of Hailfire. I think if you have plenty of treasure tokens, just dump all of that mana into it. You're probably going to get some of them back. And if that's not the case, chances are you could just kill your opponents right there. But anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this. This is the deck tech for Negan, the Cold-Blooded. Very controversial cards from the Walking Dead Secret Lair. If you want to see my opinion about that, just go back the last couple videos. Look, I just enjoy fun cards, and I like building Commander decks. As long as the game's fun, I'm still going to play it. Anyway, you all have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next time.